Hi guys, and welcome to Tutorial Grid. Now in this one we are going to be focusing in Photoshop cs5 as well as the Photoshop RAW application. So what Photoshop RAW is, it's basically whenever you're using a DSLR camera, you're going to be shooting the highest resolution possible is going to be your RAW. So always shoot in RAW plus JPEG. It's going to give you your basic RAW file as well as just a JPEG thumbnail, because you can't really look at RAW photos with a thumbnail. Don't know why, but that's just how it is. So we have some stock photo here that I took the other day at a Halloween shindig photo shoot. Now we have this guy. This is our model Violetta. Now she was gracious enough to let us use one of the photos from that photo shoot. So yeah, it's a pretty cool photo, kind of askew, and we're just gonna get right into it, shall we? So we have our RAW files here, and we'll get into these two later, but this is in our little deal here that I'm going to put down in the description, and you can be able to download these files. So let's go ahead and double click on our RAW file here. Now it brings up this window that you probably haven't seen before. Now this is our RAW application. You can change your temperatures, your tints, exposures, recovery. Recovery is for your lights. Fill light is for your darks. Black is for your ultra darks. Notice if you change this black level, it's going to oversaturate everything, but it kind of looks cool. So we also have a brightness, which is kind of the same as exposure, but not really. You can just change kind of the overall look and feel and tonage. Notice how it's getting a little bit of these colors back, but that's there. Also our clarity, which will change the sharpness and dullness of our image. So you can either have it really dull. I like using the dull clarity for close-up images, but for landscapes and like wide-angle shots like this, I usually tend to keep it up a little bit. So we'll just keep that there for now. Also, we have our vibrance and saturations, which is kind of like the same tool, but the vibrance tool will just kind of give out our really just kind of softer tones for our saturation. Notice how it changes the hair there. And our saturations, basically everything is involved in saturating the image with color. But I usually don't use this at all because I don't really find the saturation tool that important in the raw JPEG, unless you just want to go all out, balls to the wall, and change it, which I don't want to do that. But let's go ahead and get to the shot. So we have our temperature. Now I kind of like a warmer temperature, so let's go ahead and just pop this little warmer up here. So it's going to give us a little bit of a yellow tone, which is pretty cool. And yeah, that's pretty neat. I like that. Just real light and shallow. Now our exposure, I'm going to bring this down just a tad. Now I'll tell you why here in a little bit, but this is going to make this image absolutely pop out. Alright, recovery tool I don't usually tend to do a lot, because usually if you have a properly exposed shot, you're going to have everything pretty much in focus, and your lights and darks are going to be about the same. Plus this is, I know this is pretty light up here and you're like, oh gosh, well we don't have any sky, but we're going to do a sky replacement a little bit later, and I will show you how to do that. But for now, this is okay. Our blacks, I do want to change that up here, so let's go ahead and pull up our blacks a little bit. Now I know you're noticing this here, but that's the shadow, and we're gonna soften some of these things up here in just a bit. But I'm gonna bring these blacks up just a tad. Notice it's bringing the blacks up through here. Pull this up a bit. Now also, whenever you're dealing with the black levels, you're gonna have to change some of the contrast ratios between here and your saturation ratios, because you're gonna get kind of a blown out saturation. It's gonna just make your prints look a little funky. Brightness is cool. We already brought that down, and let's just kind of mess with the contrast a little bit. Now, like I said, with the black levels, your contrast levels are also going to play a big role in whether or not you know, these are correctly saturated or not. Notice on our neck we have some saturation issues, but we will get to that here in just a bit. But vibrance, we're going to go ahead and bring that down just a tad because of the hair issue. So bring that down, bring it down about right. Actually, about right there, about -19. Now we have a pretty good look right here. So let's go over into our highlights. Now this is our curves adjustment tool. These will change your overall contrast curvature limits. You can change your highlights, which is going to be your brights. You can saturate those up like crazy, and it'll pretty much just wash all of this out, but I'm going to keep mine at 0 because we're going to change that here in a bit. Also our light levels, which is going to be mostly skin tones and high next to highlighted bright areas. It changed the way our little propane tank thing here looked. See, put that down to 0, kind of a little bit more of a contrast, but I kind of want to pull that up just a tad because I like the way it's handling our little propane tank down here. Darks you can either bring down or bring up. Sometimes if you are working with a very dark image, you can kind of bring those up. Notice how it's bringing this right here with our little plants up. It's bringing some of these tones out. You can either put those up or you can take them down just a tad, more contrast image, but not really liking that. So let's bring those just up a tad. And then our shadows I like bringing down. Give that another on the big contrast image. Alright, so I kind of like the way this looks here. Looking pretty cool. Still got this little problem, but we'll mess with that here in a second. Now we have our sharpening tool and our noise reduction tool. Our sharpening tool is used pretty well if you're looking for that really high sharp image. I like using a noise reduction tool, even though I don't have a whole lot of noise because this was taken. This exposure was pretty well done. I'm actually surprised myself, but you can see just a little bit of grain here. I'm going to change my noise reduction, just pull that up just a tad, kind of softens up these little parts right here. Turn that up just a bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. But that kind of brings that out and just makes it a little bit softer whenever you're printing. But that's looking pretty good. Alright, now this is one of the most important tools that I use. This is our HSL/grayscale tool. Now this can change your saturations of each color in your pretty much your pedestal here. So the big one that we're going to focus on is our reds, because the reds are killing us with this hair. Notice, very oversaturated. So let's zoom in on here real quick. Let's see here, saturation, pull this down just a bit. Now I know you're gonna be like, now you're turning that down an awful lot, and then it's looking like that old granny that used to go to my cafeteria. I don't want to be reminded of that. I know, but it's kind of making this look a lot better. Notice this is a lot softer. You don't have that harsh saturation, and we will change this here in just a bit, but this is changing our saturations to where it's going to be a lot more manageable. But that's looking pretty good. We still have kind of an oversaturated look down here, but we'll address that here in just a little while. Alright, but that's looking pretty good. Turn that down just a tad more, and we'll change this here in a bit. Oranges, I do take a lot of saturation out of my oranges just because we have a lot of orange in her face right here, and it's not really matching up with the rest of her skin tones. So we're going to bring this down just a tad. That's also going to help with that little chin issue right here, but that's looking pretty good. You can take it all the way down. You can just be like, ew, look, yeah, no, you don't want that. This is looking pretty good. About maybe right there. It's looking pretty nice. And yellows I take down just a little bit because I like to change my overall white balance, which I'm going to change the white balance on here like crazy here in just a minute whenever we get back into Photoshop, the actual application. But in the raw application, it's pretty much the basics of what you're going to start to work with. Now notice I have right through here a little bit of blue. Now I can also take this out in the Photoshop application, or I can do it here. You can start by changing the blues and just taking out the blues just a bit. And notice how you're already getting a better black tone right through here. Also, let's take down some of the aquas. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And it's taking this down. It's just going to make the overall saturation and white balance of this image a little bit more different. So this is looking pretty good. Magentas. I'm going to mess with the magentas here. And still got a little bit of a problem here, so let's go ahead and take those down a tad. And the purples down just a tad. Didn't change it too much, but just enough to where it'll be visible on a printer. Alright, now our luminance. I'm going to turn down the blacks, or not the blacks, the reds. Gonna kind of saturate that up just a little bit more, but it's not going to change the saturation down here because we changed our saturation level here to where it's now a purple or magenta. So this is mainly looking for those darker reds now. Notice you don't have those terrible saturation problems where it was blown out. So that kind of fixed that problem, but we still have it down here. And we'll change that here in a bit with our not blur tool, what is that? Sponge tool, which will help out. But let's turn these down just a tad, a little bit more. I like that. That's looking pretty good. Alright, and the oranges I'm going to actually brighten up just a bit. It's going to make her look a lot better here. That's looking pretty good. Looking real nice. Looking real nice right there. Alright, and I'm going to bring up my yellow levels. It's looking pretty good. And let's bring down the purples and magentas. Actually, no, let's bring those up just a tad. More of a contrast image. See that? Pop. Made that pop just a little bit. Bring that down. No, we'll put that up. We'll put that up, and it's just going to make that image just have a little bit more of a oomph to it. Let's see here. Someone's calling me. I don't want to talk to anybody right now, especially you. Kidding. I like you guys. Alright, but this was pretty much the basics of our Photoshop Raw. Now we got a lot of the big problems out of the image, so this is looking pretty good right now. Well, at least the way I like it. So let's go ahead and get into some of our more creative stuff. So we're going to click done, and that's going to we're going to hit open image. So this will open our image into our Photoshop application. Alright, so we have this to work with now. Now, one of the big things I like to do is, this has a locked layer, which we're not going to really change that, but we are going to drag this down into our new layer, and we're just going to pop this up, and we're going to be able to see the difference between our first changed layer and our second layer. So we're going to go ahead and change this background copy. I'll rename it Halloween Layer 1. And I misspelled Halloween. Fantastic. Haha. Alright. First things first, I'm going to unsaturate this because I want this to be black and this to be white. I don't want any type of color in my whites or blacks. So I'm going to go down here, I'm going to click this, and I'm going to hold it down and go over to Sponge Tool. This brings up my sponge brush, which is usually a soft brush, so it's going to have softer edges around the edges. But I'm going to bring this down just a tad, and you can change the thickness of your brush by going up here and changing the thickness on here on the size, or you can use the bracket buttons, the left and right bracket button on the by the P over on your keyboard. I'm just going to kind of change the saturations through here. It's going to take out all the blue that we were dealing with, as well as the yellow from the Photoshop RAW file. Right. As well as we're going to do the saturation on the side of the building here. So get back in your tool. Zoom in on there, and saturation. See how it's becoming a more of a regular white instead of a yellow kind of tone? That's the way I like to do things. Alright. So now that we kind of got that done and over with, you can kind of see the difference just a little bit. Kind of brings in more of a little bit more natural look. So I'm going to go ahead and do it to the door as well. Now I don't want to do it too much to the door because we have these really cool rustic tones on here. So I don't want to do it too much, but I want to do it just enough to where you see a little bit of difference between the actual light levels of the yellows, but you're going to see a big difference between the white levels of the yellows and this door, which hopefully will turn into a pretty cool look. Alright, now again we have these levels and the big change. So we go from these kind of a yellowish look to a more of a white toned look, and I'm also going to change the levels on here. Just kind of give it a little touch, because we also have these levels through here with the colors of the grass, and you don't want to change those too much. All right, now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to look at her face. Now, the big thing we're going to do is we are going to kind of soften up the way these colors through here look. Now, I normally just do these on portrait shots because her face is really in focus, but this little technique that I use is going to make her look more of like an airbrush look, more of like what you would see on a magazine. Now, you're going to use the smudge tool, so click here. It's either look like a blur tool or a sharper tool or a smudge tool on here, but you're going to go to smudge tool. And I'm going to use a Wacom tablet because it's just a little bit easier. So if you have a Wacom tablet, it's definitely worth investing in. So just kind of, what you're going to do is you're going to just kind of find where this brow meets, right through here, her chin, and just kind of smudge that together a little bit to where it's just a softer kind of look. Now there's a few different techniques to do this. A lot of people use like Gaussian blur, and then they blur it completely out, and then they kind of change the opacity within the levels and their layers. But this is the way I kind of like to do it because it kind of gives a custom look. It looks very new, very new age. Kind of soften all these colors up through here. This also softens up the pixels to where on a printer they will see it as a lot softer than they will with the actual changing of the layers to if you use several different layers and use that blur like I was telling you about, it'll look a lot cleaner doing this way than it will doing that way, at least that I have noticed. Now you're probably not going to see too big of a difference unless you zoom in, but you can definitely tell the softer tone versus the regular tone. Softer, regular, softer, regular. I like softer tone. Don't know about you, but I do. You can do whatever you want with it, but this is what I like to do. Alright. Now another thing we're going to do is we're going to change the the darkness and lightness of certain parts of this image. Now for this, I'm going to use a burn and dodge tool. So I have these tools right over here. We have dodge and burn. It's over by the sponge tool as well, but I'm going to use the burn tool, and this is going to mainly go on my shadows. Now you can either change the shadow, midtone, or highlights. I usually change the shadows first. Let's go ahead and bring this out just a tad and go with our shadows, and it's just gonna kind of give more of that contrast back just a tad. make it look a little more professional. Just kind of bring back these really kind of neat colors in between here. Yes, I am literally painting on her. Now you can change layers and all this stuff, but a really good artist will be able to change just these one layers and get the exact look he is going to want. But he or she will get the looks that she wants or he wants. But you're just going to kind of paint these darker layers to where they just kind of pop out a little better. Alright, now the next thing we're going to do is change our highlights, and we are pretty much going to do about the same as we did with our dodge tool. We are going to change the highlights, but we're going to use, instead of the burn tool, we're going to use the dodge tool. Now the dodge tool is going to change mostly just highlights. Highlights and midtones is what I use the dodge tool for, and we'll get into that with the face and the hair. But right now we're going to focus on the hair and just kind of brighten those, just brighten certain parts of her hair up and give her more of a unique look instead of this bland kind of thing we've got going on here. We're just kind of soften these up here. You're always going to want to stick about at a 16, something real light. That way we have that. So we go from kind of a low contrast kind of image to a little bit more of a high contrast image. Alright, we're also going to use this dodge tool to change our midtones on the face. Make her pop out a little bit more. Alright, now since I kind of like the way we did this here, also going to dodge right over her legs here with the midtones tool. Kind of bring out her legs here. We're also going to desaturate them. Just kind of make them look a little bit more photoreal. So we're going to go back over into our sponge tool, desaturate, and pop that brush up quite a bit. Right up through there. We don't want to make her look too pale. We want to make her look real. And let's go ahead and burn some of the rest of this image. Now, I like more of an industrial look, so I'm going to really play with these rusts and our shadows. So I'm going to really darken up these rusts up here. Now, no one can actually tell you how your image is going to look. Like, if you're wanting a certain look, go ahead and use that look. But this is just kind of like what I like to use. Also, like I said, I'm going to bring the overall look on our top here as well. And let's look how it looks so far. After, before, after. It all depends just how you're really wanting it to look. Alright, now I don't like the fact that this sky is completely blown out, so I'm going to change that. Now I'm going to go ahead and make another layer here. I'm going to take off my Wacom tablet and start using my mouse. Alright, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use the magic wand tool and make sure contiguous is selected, and it will shift click and you can kind of, you know, get all those colors in through here. You can do it this way, or you can do it the easy way. Since this is pretty much a straight line, you can use a pen tool, which is something that I definitely recommend all of you learn how to use, because the pen tool is probably one of the most important tools in Photoshop. Okay, so with your pen tool selected, you are going to just click here, and you're going to go up and click here, and you're just gonna kind of align this the best you can. You're gonna have to click and drag, that way you get these little handlebars, and you will select it as best you can, which is gonna be about right there. Alternate click on your pen dot. Then you're going to go ahead and select this area right down here, and that'll do right there, and then click, and you're just kind of close off this box. Alright, then you're going to right click, make selection, and we're going to hit feather anti-A-list 2 pixels and hit OK, and we're going to hit delete. Blam! Notice this has now been deleted. No! It's so sad. Oh well. But what we're going to do is we are going to add in place. So we're going to place this file raw, which is okay. We're going to use our cloud JPEG. You can also use the raw file. Actually, let's just use the raw. Place the raw file on there. Alright, now we have these awesome clouds. Now you should love these clouds, but I want them to be kind of yellowish. We're gonna change the yellow to where they're looking kind of cool, and then we're also going to change our black levels and just make them look as just nasty as possible. And clarity, pop that up. Contrast, pop that up a little bit. Just make these look like epic freaking clouds. And you can just basically make them look as cool as you want them to, or as dull as you want them to, but I like a little bit of nastiness on mine. Just kind of cool looking. Bring out that element. Change the noise reduction a little bit. And I kind of like the way that looks, so blam! Now, you're going to wonder why it placed it over there, but we'll get to that in a second. So just hit OK on this, and you're going to drag this layer underneath our other layer, and voila! We have some epic looking clouds. Now this looks pretty cool so far. Get that lined up. Looks pretty neat. But we're going to change it just a little bit. Now, not gonna lie, this does look pretty cool. We're gonna add some lens flares and a bunch of other stuff in on this, but that looks pretty cool. But we're gonna go up to image, and actually we're gonna go to edit, transform, perspective. Now this is, since we have this kind of off skew kind of look, we're going to change the perspective on this. So grab this handle down here and just kind of move it in just a little bit. We're going to move it down, and we're going to move this out a bit. So it's going to pixelate our image just a little bit, but we're going to move this up, and we're going to hit kind of this weird little level here. So give me just a minute so I can change our skew here. Alright, I kind of like how that is looking, but I'm going to go to edit and go to free transform. Actually, I'll just hit our OK button for now. But now go to edit, free transform, and shift click on this bottom right handle, and it's going to make this a little bit bigger. That way we can really get these this bright level right through here. Cool. I'm liking the way that looks. And to kind of change over here, we're going to go to image adjustments. Actually, we have to rasterize this so we can mess with it a little bit more. So after we rasterize it, we're going to change the skew here, and image adjustments, curves, blam. Kind of make this line up just a little bit better, or you can change the brightness of it if you want. A lot better. What this looks like a pretty epic picture right now. And if you want to get to kind of a little bit more of a neater look, you can use your dodge tool here, or not dodge. you want a little bit better look, you got to use your burn tool and really just kind of burn the edges over here. Darken those up just a little bit. But yeah, that looks pretty neat. But anyway, this is Cherokee over at Tutorial Grid, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. We went over a lot of different things. We went over sky replacement. We went over raw image application. We went over some Photoshop tools like the dodge tool. We went over burn tool, sponge tool, and our smudge tool for basic image editing. So I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you next time.